My name is Adam Lake, and I'm going to be your host and moderator for today. And I'm going to kick off with, as we do at the Impact Communications Initiative, with we're going to be talking about the land that we are on. So we are joining today from various unceded lands and territories. I live and work in New York City, the homeland of the Lenape, and who were displaced as a result of settler colonialism over the course of 400 years. I'm grateful to be a guest on this land, and I invite you to share where you're joining from today in the chat, because it's always great to see where everyone else is coming from. I'm head of communications for North America at the Climate Group, and I also sit on the executive board of the Impact Communications Institute. And as the person that ran several Climate Week NYC since 2018, I'm really excited to share with you all some tips and tricks on how you can make the most out of next week, whether you are in New York City in person or you are joining us online. And I'm especially excited to be joined by my colleague Aka today, who is basically in charge of the entire world of over 900 events which are taking place throughout the week, engaging with all these different groups and hosts, from large companies to small community groups. So Aka and I are going to be having a wonderful conversation. We're going to be taking your questions, and we're going to be letting you know how you can make the most out of the week. In terms of general Climate Week NYC, what are great things to do? But as you can imagine, we are going to have a very specific focus in our conversation today about where you can attend things from an impact communications point of view as well. And we've got some fantastic events which we can guide you towards this lunchtime. So we're going to share a preview about Climate Week NYC as an impact communicator. And I'd love it if throughout the day, if you can send any questions or thoughts that you want to, we can respond to those as well. Before we kick off proper, I just want to share a couple of community guidelines for the session. One, please do mute yourself throughout this session so we don't hear background office noise. But of course, if we're calling you to ask a question later, you are very welcome to unmute. We ask everyone to respect the opinions of others. If opportunities arise, please remember to critique the idea and not the person. We invite participation. We've planned time for Q&A. So as I say, please do put your questions in the chat, and we will get to those, as many as we can if we've got time. And as I mentioned right at the beginning, this session will be recorded and it will be shared on our YouTube channel. So please do share that, because I'm sure your different networks will be equally enthusiastic to find out how they can get the most out of the week. Let's talk a little bit about the Impact Communications Institute. Who are we? If you're joining us for the first time today, the Impact Communications Institute is a registered nonprofit organization on a mission to use the tools of communications to drive positive systemic change. And if you haven't already, you can become a member by taking our pledge to honor our charter for responsible and ethical communications. You can do this by visiting impactcomsinstitute.org. And each month, we aim to host these free to attend impact councils on the latest in impact communications, which focus on tangible outcomes and how-tos for our community. So I've introduced the Impact Communications Institute, I've introduced myself, and I've introduced Aka. So let's go into the session proper. Aka, I'm going to fire over a question to you, which will be of interest to people who've never attended Climate Week NYC before, which is what is your advice for someone joining Climate Week NYC for the first time?
Yeah, thanks so much, Adam, and nice to meet you all. Thank you so much for joining us. I think Climate Week NYC for the first time can feel a little bit daunting, especially this year, given that we have over 800 events happening across the city, some virtual, some in person, across 10 different themes. So I can understand how it can feel a little bit overwhelming. But what I would say for a first-time attendee is to essentially just think about what it is that you're trying to accomplish from the week. So just ask yourself, like, what is my goal for this week? What do I want to get out of it? Do you want to network? Are you looking to meet more people in the climate space? Are you looking to probably get a new job? Are you looking to learn something new? I think it just really helps to be able to decide for yourself what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and then streamline your event search from there. Because like I said, there's 900 plus events that are going on throughout the week, and it can be very overwhelming. So when you head to the website, for example, just start by theme and think, okay, so if I'm going to go to an energy event, what do I want to get out of there? Do I want to learn something about energy, or do I want to focus more on like the creative, cultural, arts related events and just have a little bit of fun, meet people, network, mingle. So it really is up to you to decide how you want to maximize your week and how you want to make the most of all the events that are going on. But I think it's something you have to decide beforehand, so that when Sunday comes, you have everything planned out, your calendars, everything's in the schedule, and you're really able to go out there and go from one event to another, making sure that you're really optimizing your presence in each of these events. So yeah, I think that's just like really the best step. Just kind of deciding beforehand what you want to get out of it, and then selecting events that are based off of that goal. And I'm sure you're going to have a wonderful, really rewarding and fulfilling week. So.
And of course, over 900 events, there's going to be real diversity in the structure and the size of how these things operate. Maybe could you give us what are some of the really interesting events that you've seen at Climate Week NYC, either in the past or that you've seen coming through and registering for next week?
Yeah, so just outside of climate cons and impact cons, there's some really interesting, fun stuff that are going on this year. We have the Climate Film Festival, which is happening for the first time this year in New York City. They're going to be showcasing lots of really interesting, knowledgeable documentaries about just like climate change and climate action. It will be starting, I believe, on Saturday, this weekend. And so it's the first ever that's happened, and we're really happy to have partnered with them. So I think there's no better way to really learn about climate change and what's happening than through watching a nice documentary. It's informative, it's educative, it's fun, and it's just a great way to meet people. So that's really exciting, and anyone can attend. You don't even have to be a professional in the field. Just go and sit and watch something. I think that would be really exciting. And then there's also something really cool that I saw. It's called the A.Y. Young's Music for Impact, and it's a concert that's fully powered by solar panels and like renewable energy. And he's literally the first artist to do that. Like he's the first artist to power his concerts with 100% renewable energy. He's going to be at Times Square this Saturday. So that's really exciting. It's free, everyone can go, and it really teaches you to see that anyone can participate in Climate Week, whether you're an artist, you can do it sustainably. If you're an attendee, you're contributing to somebody who's, working towards a good cause. So those are two really exciting things that came to mind, at least for the start of the week. But obviously, there's hundreds more Monday all through Sunday. So yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting point. One of the things that I hear a lot from people, obviously Climate Week NYC is just 1 week, but Climate Group, with the NGO that runs Climate Week, we do work throughout the year. And I always find it incredibly interesting when you meet people who have gone through a career, whether it be in communications or climate, or usually both of those things. But actually, it's those events which they attend at Climate Week NYC, whether in person or online, that provide them with the knowledge and the network to allow them to go into whatever direction that they want to go in. Aka, you're very much on the front line here. You're meeting with these hundreds of different groups doing very different things. For someone who's maybe starting out in their career, how would you suggest that they approach looking at the agenda, what sorts of things to go to, and how you should sort of act and get the most out of these sessions for those ones which you choose to attend?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think a good Climate Week NYC event has very clear objectives, right? So that's how you kind of are able to gauge which one's good. I mean, all of them are impactful in their own way, but I think for someone who's still starting out, trying to figure out, okay, how do I optimize this? Just looking out for events that have more creative, interesting, but yet niche agendas that are focused on one or two things at most, just so people can kind of walk into the room knowing what they're about to get out of it and then leaving with like tangible results or like a tangible outcome. And so we also really encourage event hosts to diversify their audience and diversify like their speakers and panelists, because obviously New York City represents all kinds of people from different backgrounds and different cultural perspectives. And so events that have diverse panels really tend to ensure that different voices are part of the conversation being heard, and just making sure that discussions are relevant and inclusive. I think that really helps. And then looking out for events that have some sort of like interactive element in it. So it could be like a Q&A session where you really get to get up and talk and ask questions rather than just sitting back and kind of being a fly on the wall, or like a brainstorming opportunity where like attendees can discuss problems and solutions, and just like, or like maybe a live demonstration of something or a video of some sort, just any way that can be any event that can allow you to kind of interact and contribute, and just kind of be a more present part of the conversation, I think would always be great. But I think in terms of impact, we always encourage our hosts to have effective follow-up actions after Climate Week NYC, because it's really crucial to help us sustain that momentum that's happening. Because we don't want everything to kind of start and end September 29th, September 22nd to 29th. We want to carry on these conversations all year round, really. And so I think just being able to find like different resources and like distributing recordings, presentations, materials, just creating groups with your attendees, and just like being able to find a way to summarize the key takeaways of these events and what action items that you want to challenge your audience to take after the event is a really great way to just like establish a network for your attendees, and to
Yeah.
continue these discussions and share these ideas even after the events come to an end.
And I think that's really interesting. And I think one piece of advice I'd also give to our impact communicators here on this call, it is, the climate world, the climate bubble, if we call it that, can sometimes feel a little bit hard to penetrate. There's lots of lingo, there's lots of networks. And maybe you work in communications, but you don't work in climate communications, but you want to get into it. It can feel like, I don't have a master's in this, or I've never worked in that, and I don't understand what an NDC is. One thing I'd say, and this is a theme coming out, whether it's government communications in the climate space, business communications, and especially in the nonprofit space as well. Storytelling is a word that we're using a lot, and it's really important to people. And actually, if you're not from the climate space, but you're a storyteller, you understand how people perceive stories, you understand how to get responses from individuals, you're actually more valuable than less valuable than someone else who might have the right diplomas or otherwise to get into that space. And I think going to events that you don't understand and finding ways to interpret it in a way that you understand is a really strong tool. And I think the wider communications and climate world is something that can get some real value from that. So I'd say, don't be shy. And if you're feeling stumped by something, don't see that as a negative, see that as a positive. Aka, before I just go to a question from the audience, I want to ask you, we've talked about, your advice for people going to Climate Week NYC for the first time, but this is the 16th year that we're running Climate Week NYC, which is quite crazy to think of it. How is this year going to be a bit different than what we've seen in previous years?
I think that's great. And to touch on your previous point, I think this year we're seeing more of a growth and expansion of like climate and impact communications events that are happening throughout the week, which is really exciting. I think even just climate communications as a field is growing, because I think as comms professional, like for me, for example, I have 2 degrees in communication, so I've been there for a minute, and I've learned that we have to be way more intentional about the way that we do our work, because I think the goal of our job is to be able to demystify really complicated and complex climate topics, and just take a more unique approach, because the goal is to convey these causes and to convey the characteristics and impacts of climate change in a way that is digestible to like the average person or across different audiences. And so, for example, how somebody in energy will be able to understand climate topics is not the same as how someone in sustainable living or environmental justice will be able to understand it. And so I think there are several key events that we've lined up during Climate Week NYC, which would really allow professionals to be able to convey and express and demonstrate how effective communication strategies can actually drive climate change. And another really exciting thing that we're seeing this year is how compelling narratives in media and storytelling, so like books and films and documentaries, etc., is helping to create like a more resonant climate message across like different audiences as well, like with the Climate Film Festival and all of the really cool artistic things that are happening. Like they're part of the climate communications conversation, because it's all under one little umbrella. So for example, I saw this event that stated that their goal or their mission was to flip the script on the doom and gloom narratives that we usually see a lot when it comes to climate communications. And like I totally resonate with that, because when you think about climate change, sometimes it can be a little bit depressing, because it is a matter of life or death and human life and health and our planet's health and cities and things like that. So it's also important as climate communicators to be able to convey the great things that are happening as well in the climate space. There's progress being made every single day in different fields and different arenas. And so it's just really exciting that this year we're seeing more events come into the conversation with a more uplifting tone in their messaging, and where they're really able to kind of like showcase the pioneering work of like people in climate tech and founders, investors, media professionals, artists, actors, musicians that are doing important work that's also part of climate change. So yeah, there's like a handful of events that are communicating essentially like the power of hope, and the power of like the progress being made, and just implementing that into their work. And so I also have a link. We have a newly published article essentially, or like a blog post on our website that's highlighting about 10 climate communications events that are happening during Climate Week NYC. I believe Tessa will drop that in the chat somewhere, but have a look at it. They're hosted by PR companies, communication companies, firms, all kinds of people really doing really cool climate communication stuff this year. So that's something that I'm excited about, at least.
Brilliant. And I see Melissa has just popped that article in the chat. There's some really fantastic sessions there where you can, join in, and these are really people leading the way in terms of climate communications. So I think these are really fantastic sessions. And Tess has posted it as well. There we are, Melissa and Tess. Thank you. You've got it twice now, but there's no excuse not to check out the article. And as you always say, LinkedIn is vibrant at this time of year, so please do share it amongst your networks as well, because this is all about sharing the knowledge with each other to make sure everyone can make the most out of the week. I'm gonna take a question that I see here from Cambridge, UK. I'm in NYC right now, but I'm originally from the UK, as you might have got from the accent. The question is, are we likely to see any changes in policy announced next week? I might kick off an answer on that one first, then Aka, invite you to come in as well. One thing I would say is, especially this year, but we've seen it in previous years as well, is that politicians and the business community are increasingly seeing Climate Week NYC as the main platform to announce things to have the biggest impact. And I think over the years, we've certainly seen that. So I recall Jacinda Ardern, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, will be joining us on Monday at opening ceremony. But I remember in my first ever Climate Week NYC in 2018, she came and joined us on stage while she was Prime Minister and announced a major new policy change to protect small island states. That was something that they felt Climate Week NYC was the platform to do it, because it encourages the international community who are coming together for the week to see these things as examples of what they can do as well. And it's not just national policy which moves during the week as well. I think it was 3 years ago, Governor Kathy Hochul, who's the governor of New York, announced on stage her decision to sign off investment in a major project which would see hydroelectric power come from Canada and produce energy for New York City. This is reducing in some areas of Queens, which are terribly polluted. Fossil fuel emissions will be reduced by 20%, which will have a real impact on lives and a real impact on asthma rates in those communities. And that is something where the switch will be turned on next year. This project is nearly built, which will have a real impact on people. And that's just 2 examples. We see on a national, a subnational, and on a local level, a number of policy announcements, which are, the policy obviously doesn't change during the week because these are big major government announcements that need to go through a whole process internally, but they're announced at Climate Week NYC, and people use this week. Of course, it's the United Nations General Assembly that week as well. They use this as an opportunity to promote what they are doing as a country, as a state, as a town, to create climate action. So I think that's one way, we will expect to see some policy announcements next week. I'd also say that it's not just government policy which is influential during Climate Week NYC. In fact, in many cases, more so, business policy announcements. That's something you will see a huge amount during the week. One thing I always like to comment on is, I remember in my earlier years at Climate Week NYC, it's kind of amusing when you have a chief executive of a large well-known company go on stage and they make an announcement that they're going to invest X, Y, or Z in something, and they get their applause. And then you get another CEO come out and they're going to make an even bigger investment or an even bigger change. And then you see the first CEO looking quite grumpy in the green room. And that is the sort of thing that we absolutely love at Climate Week NYC, because competitiveness is a really important way that we can make a difference. And one of our theories from a communication standpoint for Climate Week NYC is the bigger the stage we create, the more embarrassment there is for people who are not hitting as hard as they could. And so I think that's a great way that we're changing action from a business perspective, and communications is absolutely at the heart of that. But maybe also from the wider week perspective, there's a lot of nonprofits and community groups who are taking very meaningful actions on a local level as well. I wonder if you've got any reflections in terms of how change happens throughout the week, especially on the more local level.
Yeah, for sure. I think with the wider week, the goal is just to, first of all, have people gather and talk about these policies to begin with. Because, for example, someone who's not even aware of what climate policies are in place in their state or in their local government or in their office, I think it just really starts from striking a conversation, just getting in the room and hearing from people and seeing, even just like informing how they vote. Like, oh, do I vote for this candidate or that candidate based off of the policies that they're potentially going to offer if they're voted into election, whether it's the governor or whoever it is, really. So I think with the wider week, the beauty of it is that it just allows people to gather and talk and learn from each other and hear things. Because sometimes you just don't know what policies are in place until you hear it, you read about it, or someone's really just like having a conversation about it. So, and we have a policy theme as well, which is really great because that's kind of where all these event hosts kind of can be like streamline the goals that they have for the week in terms of when it comes to policy and policy related work. And so if you are interested in that, just make sure you head to the website because you'll be able to kind of see a much better offering and a good list of policy related events if you're looking to learn more and kind of be in the loop when it comes to that strand.
Fantastic. And I want to take another question, but I'm just adding in a link so that people can go where I want to send them. The question is from Van. It's my first time at Climate Week. Where are the best places for Climate Week goers to connect and network in between sessions? I'm adding a link for something called the Nest Summit, which takes place at the Javits Center. The Javits Center is vast. It's the largest event space in New York City. And as with the majority of events which take place throughout the week, it is free of charge. You just need to demonstrate in your registration why you are going. So if you work in communications and you're interested in climate change, that is a good reason for them to say yes. But you're going to be looking at many thousands of people there. It's a great way to connect with different people. But I think another take on that question as well is this concept of in-between sessions. With over 900 events, there's not much in-between session time. And I'd say that some of the events that are listed as part of the wider week have been purposefully designed to bring different people together to allow them to network. It's not a sort of panel session. It's not a presentation. It's an opportunity for people to come and connect. So I definitely navigate the event calendar to find those sorts of things because that's going to give you the best chance of finding something where you're going to meet like-minded people as well. But Aka, sort of peeking behind the curtain on this one, and going into a little bit more detail on how the calendar works, do you have any advice on what's the best way of sort of navigating that calendar? How many things should you put into the diary, and should you leave a little bit of space to do stuff that you just weren't planning for?
Yeah, of course. I mean, first of all, wear good shoes, comfortable shoes. I saw that tip on LinkedIn. Somebody talked about all the Climate Week NYC tips and tricks that they had. I mean, New York is such a vast city. But one thing I would encourage is make sure you kind of branch out to other boroughs as well, because I know Manhattan is the most popular and majority of things are happening here, but there's such amazing stuff going on in Queens and Brooklyn, Governor's Island and the Bronx. Staten Island even has something going on. So and all five boroughs have things happening. And I think the more you kind of branch out, the less you feel like, oh, I'm just stuck and feel so constrained within one island. You know what I'm saying? So just make sure you kind of try to diversify where you're going to be because that helps make it less exhausting just being stuck in one place. And also, too, I would say we do have an app that we launched, and our app features some sustainable businesses. So if you need a break, there's some really nice coffee shops that are fully sustainable and totally like green businesses that you can support in between events. If you just need like a little break or a breather somewhere, go through our community listings. We do feature these companies and restaurants that are doing such great work and are just like really focused on making food and food at least sustainable. So if you're needing that break or just an opportunity to just relax a little bit, there's lots of really great sustainable businesses that you can pop into, say hello, and support them as well. That's kind of something that we really are passionate about when it comes to Climate Week. So yeah, the app is great. Yeah, it's a great networking tool as well.
What advice would you give to people? Obviously, we've got a lot of people on this call from around the world who will be joining online. Could you talk to us a little bit about what it's like to join Climate Week NYC online?
Yeah, so obviously we recognize that, a lot of people really do want to participate, but they can't because they're not in New York City, and that's fine. That's why we opened up space for events to happen virtually as well. So there are events that are hybrid, so they'll be happening in person, but there'll be like a live streaming option. So on our website, you're able to also filter the format of the event. So if you are strictly only able to attend online, just click the online filter in the website, and it will just create hundreds of events that are happening virtually across all themes. I believe everything has at least 10 or 15 virtual events, which is really great. So attendees from different states or different countries are able to tune in. And then there's, like I said, hybrid mode as well. So even if, let's say, you are only able to attend the morning sessions, you can go home and tune in and continue with the afternoon session. So you're not exhausted all day. Because the blocks can be long, correct? It can be really long days. Like we have things going on from 9 a.m. to like 9 p.m. And so just being able to kind of choose, okay, what events do I really want to be physically present at so I can meet people and network, and which ones can I stay home and tune in and still be able to accomplish something for the day. So yeah, I think it's really great to have that virtual option. And the events are very much there. You just have to kind of check the filters and make sure that that applies. But a lot of our event hosts, we work with them to select the best live streaming platforms, or like even things like Zoom or Teams, or there's lots of them. So it's very accessible. It's very open to everybody. All you need is just a laptop or a phone to connect and stable internet, and you'll be a part of the week as well. So that's a really good part.
And just to share my own anecdote on that as well, as I'm sure many people remember, when there was the COVID pandemic, everything had to change, and we had to find a completely different way of doing things. And at the time, many of the large climate sort of events that happened, such as COP, decided to postpone, and we took the decision that we wanted to make sure we kept Climate Week NYC, but we would turn it into a fully online event during that year. And I have to be completely honest with you, I was really worried that the wider week, so that's what we use to describe these 900 events that we have taking place this year, would be severely damaged, because if you are at Climate Week NYC, it is a lot of fun. You meet a lot of people, and meeting people is a really enticing way of bringing folks together. And I was concerned that by putting it online, there's going to be less enthusiasm, and that, when I joined in 2018, we weren't getting 100 events. We built it up to 400 events the year prior. I thought we were going to see a major drop off, not just for that year, but in future years as well. And you know what? I was proved totally and utterly wrong. There's something special in New York City in terms of that engagement, in terms of people's enthusiasm to have these discussions. And we broke our record for the first time that year. And there were hundreds of events that took place, the same groups and organizations, the same commitments and conversations, and the same value of networking came through a wholly online event, which is why we changed the rules. After that year, we previously didn't allow online events. We now absolutely encourage online events as well. So if you're not in New York City, don't feel like you're getting a second-rate Climate Week NYC experience because you're just joining online. I did that Climate Week from London during COVID, and I was running the week. You can absolutely get everything you want to get out of Climate Week NYC by joining online. I'd also say that some of the headline sessions which are taking place, including the Hub Live, which takes place on the Monday and the Tuesday, this is where we see lots of head of states and CEOs and businesses, et cetera, et cetera. These sort of, I say sold out of tickets, we don't sell the tickets, but we ran out of tickets for these a long time ago. So online is the only way that you can see these things. And because they're recorded, you can watch them at a time that suits you. And this is a really important opportunity for you to hear from the voices of these leaders themselves on the different policy announcements that they're going to be making. So do check out our website if you want to see those sessions as well. Online is definitely where it is at. I'm going to go to another question, Aka, a good one for you, especially as last year was your first Climate Week NYC. So I'd love to hear your perspective on this. What are some of the rookie mistakes that folks make when attending for the first time?
I think one really popular rookie mistake is, I think someone even said it in the chat, which kind of inspired this response, is always like having FOMO in terms of, oh, I didn't go to this event, I feel bad, and then you're just forgetting about the actually nice event that you did go to. There's no need to have FOMO at all. Like even if you're not able to make one event. It doesn't mean that the ones that you did go to are less impactful. It just means you can't split yourself into 900 different people and attend everything. So don't waste your time feeling bad about what you can't go to or what you can't attend or what you weren't invited to, and just like maximize what is available and what you're able to actually attend. So for example, if you're coming from out of town and you're only there for 2 days, don't worry about what you're going to miss out on Wednesday if it's only in person, or what's happening on Sunday if you forgot to put in your calendar. Or sometimes even I see event attendees sometimes complain like, oh, I really want to go to this event, but it's already sold out, or they've reached capacity, I can't make it. I'm like, it's okay. There's so much more happening. You know, like our social media, we're always reposting from our event hosts, who are adding new things every single day. The app is always updated every day. The website is updated every day. So don't fixate too much on what you're not able to go to, because then you kind of just lose that excitement and that steam. So kind of just decide for yourself, like, okay, I'm gonna go to 10 events, it's the capacity I have. Because also we recognize that this is happening during people's work week. Like some people are gonna be working 9 to 5 throughout Climate Week. So if you're only able to go to the evening events, it doesn't make it any less impactful. It doesn't mean that you're missing out or you're not maximizing the week. Like, yes, you'll miss out on some stuff, but the evening events are also really impactful and really great. There's lots of great offerings happening up until like 10 p.m. or midnight even. So just kind of focusing on what you're able to do, and however you're able to maximize your week, no matter how small, even if it's one event that you go to, it still means something. You're going to learn something. You're going to meet really great people. You're still part of the movement. So don't, waste your time essentially ruminating on what you haven't been able to go to, because there is a lot going on, but you kind of have to make that choice and say, I'm going to do this. It's going to be a great week for me regardless. And also really just like, another rookie mistake I would say is people like not networking. I don't think there's a better time than during Climate Week NYC than to network. I mean, if you are new in the climate space, especially, there's all kinds of people, not just New Yorkers, but people from other states and countries coming in that have a wealth of expertise that you can learn from. So don't be shy, say hello. New Yorkers are very friendly too, I would say. There's this terrible stereotype that New Yorkers aren't friendly. No, everyone's really nice. And so whenever you go to events, don't be afraid to say hello. Make sure you have your business card as well if you're into that. I know we're all trying to reduce printing and paper stuff, but if you have a business card, even if it's a virtual card or just like your LinkedIn open and available to connect with people on social media, connect with them in group chats. Um, just don't be afraid to network. Don't be shy at all, because the worst you can hear is no if you have a question or an inquiry, or you're looking for your next big job. But, people are ready to help. Everyone's in town for one mission, which is to drive climate action fast. So really your goal is just don't be shy, don't be afraid, don't be too hung up on, oh, I'm not like a senior executive. No, even if you just got out of school, even if you're still in college, even if you're, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever level you are in your career, it doesn't really matter at all. I mean, whatever room that you're in, you deserve to be in that room. So feel proud that you were able to make it to 1 or 2 events or however many, and introduce yourself, say hello, network. Networking is so impactful and so powerful. Like I said, there's no better time than during Climate Week, because everyone will be here. It's a really big week. So yeah, just network and don't be afraid at all.
And you said LinkedIn there, and I just want to echo that point. I cannot stress enough how proper use of LinkedIn will change your life and your career and your sort of growth as an individual and as a professional. I didn't spend a lot of time on LinkedIn for many years. I thought it was a place where you post your CV and look for jobs, but no, absolutely, it's completely different. It allows you to network in a way like no other. And you don't have to, it's not like other social media where you're constantly having to give updates all the time about everything that you're doing. But if you go to an interesting event, post that you were there, tag the people who are on the panel, talk about what you got from that event. People will respond to that, especially if you're joining online, but also in person. Once you get into the habit of doing that, you become seen as someone within the climate community who is worth listening to. The amount of times I've invited someone to sit on a panel or to come to an event or to enter into a discussion or be interviewed for a job because you've noticed them on LinkedIn, you notice how they react to different things. And it just tells you that you are aware that this is someone who understands what's going on. So I think, LinkedIn can be wild sometimes. I know that my inbox and many people's other inboxes at this time of year is a bit crazy. And it's hard to read all of those private messages. But in terms of those public posts, it's a really important way of engaging and using the proper hashtag Climate Week NYC is an important way of making us notice as well, so we can share your tweets and your posts and your stories with other people. So LinkedIn is absolutely critical, and being engaged with LinkedIn is a really vital thing as part of Climate Week NYC, but throughout the rest of the year as well. I want to take another question in the chat, which is from Charlotte. Love that health is a theme on your agenda for the first time this year. I'd welcome any commentary on how and why this came to be. Aka, do you want to kick off with this one?
Yeah, of course. So this is the first year that we're introducing the health theme as part of one of the 10 strands that we have for Climate Week NYC. And the reason we've done this is because health is a really personal thing, if you think about it, because is our own to keep, it's our own to maintain, but at the same time, we're also thinking about the health of our planet. And so human health is definitely affected by climate change in so many different ways. And we talk about like climate-induced illnesses and diseases and things like that. There's just lots of data and studies coming out, really just like demonstrating the connection between climate change and how it impacts human health and planetary health as well. And so, yeah, it's the first time that we're doing this in collaboration with the Wellcome Trust. They're based in the UK, and they've been working really hard for the past year. We actually introduced this for the first time during the US Climate Action Summit in DC, and Adam can touch on this a little bit more. But we brought it to Climate Week NYC for the first time this year, and we have loads and loads of health events that are going on. So, Adam, if you just want to touch a bit more on the history of how this community, that would be more helpful.
Sure. I think one of the things that we really try and do with Climate Week NYC, especially when everyone is involved in organizing events and things, is we try and notice trends that are happening before they become mainstream, to assist other people in showing they get the benefit from being the first to use that sort of trend, to use some sort of comedy language there. And we really started noticing just over a year ago, this notion of climate and health was something that was really getting a lot of traction from people. And there's a number of reasons for that. But I think one reason that's particularly important, especially as this is an election year, is that climate and health is a really great way of talking about climate change and its impact on society in a depoliticized way. And across different, and this is not just a US audience here, whether you're in Canada or the UK or in Europe, South Africa, China, India. If you're talking about climate from the point of view of the health impacts, whether it is the air quality or it's heat, or it's the increase in diseases like malaria because of changes in humidity, these are things that everyone can understand, and these are things that can unite people when they're looking at formatting policies, whether in the government or business space. And so we see climate and health as a weapon to ensure climate being something that is central to policy, not just this year, but in future years as well. And so we created this health theme because we're not experts in climate and health, but we want to create a platform where people can come together and become experts as a group. So this theme brings together lots of different events, and we're using this as an opportunity this year to inform us on what actually do we mean when we talk about climate and health. And so it's been fantastic seeing so many things taking place. I know there's we did a briefing last week on climate and health specifically, and there's WhatsApp groups and there's lots of different events taking place. So this is certainly looking to be one of the most popular themes across the 10 themes that we're having at Climate Week NYC. And it's something I certainly hope to see in future years as well. So that's the climate and health piece. I'm going to find the next question here. It's a little bit similar to before, but a slightly different angle, Akka, if you want to take this. I love how events like this often inspire organic meetups and opportunities to connect with others working on similar issues. What are the best social media platforms to use to follow the event in real time, so I might be able to join these unofficial but related events?
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, obviously, number one, like Adam said earlier, LinkedIn is definitely the go-to. If you just go by searching hashtag Climate Week NYC, you'll see so much more information about what people are doing, the networking events and more social events where you can go meet people, say hello, and just like talk and interact and meet people within your field. So LinkedIn, I think, is really amazing. But also, I would say our Instagram is doing really well. It's at Climate Group. And we are literally reposting events every single day. We're always on the stories, just like reposting what people are doing and reposting new updates and new listings that are coming through. So I would say Twitter is, well, X now is also a really, really wonderful platform. It's I find it to be more interactive because you can tweet at people and ask them questions and just have more engaging one-on-one conversations. So if you are an X, again, just use the hashtag Climate Week NYC, because we encourage both our hosts and attendees to use that hashtag so they can actually meet each other. That's like the number one way to really get to see who's attending and who's doing what. So LinkedIn, if you're more looking for the more professional route of things, X, if you're trying to have more conversations, and then Instagram, if you're just trying to see daily updates and reposts that Climate Group is doing of all of the events that are happening across the week.
Absolutely. And do check out the Climate Group stories, because we're bringing in a number of influencers to take over our Instagram account over the coming days. And they're going to be explaining what they're doing during the week as well, which is always quite good fun. And we always love doing a good Instagram story. We've got a question from Mbali. It's a great question, actually. Do you have any creative climate programming? By this, I mean panels framing artists as impact communicators. Are there any fellowships for those of us interested in curating or contributing, but working independently and based abroad? And how would I go about participating? Akka, do you want to go to that first? And I can give some thoughts as well.
Yeah, creative climate programming. So I think my understanding of that would be, do you mean like exhibitions? Because there's lots of really cool artistic exhibitions that are going on. But the thing is, they're mostly in person, which is a shame. But because this is like artwork that's being displayed, or like there's creative elements to it, like music or performances and things like that. I reckon they're mostly happening in person. So that would, I think those mostly fall under our sustainable living and environmental justice themes, because that's kind of like, at least from what I've noticed, artists tend to kind of be on that side in terms of expressing themselves through their art, through their music, through all kinds of artwork. And so, yeah, the more creative programming, I would say, would fall under our sustainable living and environmental justice theme. So if you go on our website and you filter to those, you would definitely see a wealth of events that are going on that are catered towards, the creatives and people in the artistic space. And in terms of fellowships for people interested in curating and contributing and working independently and based abroad, Adam, do you know of any fellowships that might be going
So
on?
I think a lot of the people that we work with. So I mean, the initial answer on that is there are so many creative activations taking place throughout the week. I know that the American Museum of Natural History is doing something that you can go and engage with in person. That's with the Wellcome Trust. Governor's Island is also bringing in a number of artists, and we see dozens of different activations taking place throughout the week. I'd suggest, in terms of organizations that can help you engage with that, including for those people who are not based in New York City, the advice that I would give is going on to the event calendar and searching for these artistic activations will give you the best idea of the sorts of organizations that are backing these projects. And a number of these projects will work internationally, and they will have programs where you can engage with their work as well. So I know that UN Live, the Museum of the United Nations, have a fantastic program where they really try and expand globally in terms of the work that they do. Wellcome Trust is another one. Global Citizen Festival, so that is a big music festival in Times Square that happens at the end of the week. They have a program where they do different concerts and things around the world as well. But there's so many more to mention there. So I think, and this is something I do personally as well, going through the list, finding events that you'd like to be getting involved with, but you're not involved, finding out which organizations are backing this, who's speaking, who's promoting it, which is the non-profit which is supporting this, and then getting in touch with them. And going back to the advice we were giving earlier, this includes finding out who are the right people in that organization, adding them on LinkedIn, commenting nice things about the work that they were doing, and they will start to notice you. And if there's an opportunity to get involved with the work that they're doing, that is a surefire way to get there. So I think that's how I would approach the foundation piece as well. I'm looking at another question here. My first time, this is from Jennifer, my first time at Climate Week NYC. When discussing emerging issues, especially in light of the UNFCCC not able to fund and hold regional climate weeks this year, have you observed a rise in participation from atypical organizations during Climate Week NYC?
Oh, sorry, was
Thinking about
that
that, I read that out straight away. So I'm happy to give an immediate response to give you a bit of time to repeat that one as well, Akka. I mean, I'd say a few different things. First of all, absolutely things are bigger this year. Last year was a record-breaking year with 585 events. This year is over 900 events. So the scale is huge, but also the quality of the events is rising exponentially as well. There is definitely a year-on-year increasing focus on Climate Week NYC as an opportunity to come together and take all those benefits which we've been talking about. I think it's really interesting your comment about the UNFCCC not being able to fund and hold regional climate weeks. A few years back, we were working with the UNFCCC. I was fortunate enough to go to Climate Week Africa in Ghana and look at ways which we can support each other in making sure that these global climate weeks are something where a big difference can be made. And so whilst they're not happening for now, I think there is a huge opportunity in future years of finding ways in which these things can grow. I'd say with the lack of the regional climate weeks, which used to be called carbon forums, which are very policy focused, and the fact that maybe there's less emphasis on COP this year in Azerbaijan, although I believe next year is going to be a very big year in Belém in Brazil, we are seeing a much stronger focus in New York on policy-based discussions. So we're seeing a lot more representation, not just from world leaders, but from those subnational leaders as well, ministers of the environment, ministers for health, and things like that. So I think those are the trends that we're sort of seeing. But I don't know, Akka, in terms of the wider week, are there any other different themes that we're seeing that perhaps we haven't seen so much in the past?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're seeing a lot of more like non-traditional actors like private companies and tech startups and just regular civil society organizations really stepping up and also participating and hosting their own events. But for sure, I think this year there's broader engagement. And I think that's essentially like signaling a shift towards, people just wanting to be a part of like stakeholder engagement in general. With whether or not Climate Week is happening, people are still going to be doing stuff. So yeah, I think the numbers speak for itself as well. Just like with the increased number of events that are happening, people are different organizations and non-traditional event hosts are stepping up and trying to be a part of it and do their own stuff too. So I think that's really great to see as well.
Fantastic. We've got another great question here, which I love. What are your favorite events or activities for job seekers?
I think the networking events would be number one priority because when you think about like the panels where people are speaking and stuff, there just might not be enough time for you to walk up to somebody and say, "Hello, I'm XYZ from here. I have this to," you know what I'm saying? Like with the panels and stuff, it's more so you're sitting as an audience member, you're listening to people conveying like really talking about really interesting topics and sharing their wealth of knowledge with you. But when you think about the networking events, there's lots of happy hours. Like if you type happy hour in the event search, you would see there's a lot of it happening. So those I think would be a more relaxed space to, it's not like a job fair. I don't believe that there's any particular job fair going on, but because there's lots of professionals and CEOs and hiring managers who will be in town attending these events, I think the networking events like the happy hours and the socials and things are happening post work hours where people just come gather have a drink. It creates more of a lax environment to not be like, hey, I need a job, but more so, hello, look at me, I'm doing XYZ. How can I get involved? How can I get plugged in? What is your advice for me as a starter in the industry? You know what I'm saying? So I think those networking events would be your best bet if you're trying to talk about like job growth and your performance just in the field and things like that.
That's really good advice. And I think if I might be able to offer an additional piece of advice as well, I'd say that there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of stories coming out throughout the week. There'll be papers published, there'll be commitments made, there'll be all sorts of things going out there. And the media can't balance it all, and not every announcement gets the attention it deserves. And some of these are really, really great announcements. And something that you can do which will really impress the climate community, and it will be useful and educational for you as well, is whether you're in person or catching online or looking through the media, is have a look through these announcements and commitments that are being made. And if you are a communicator, the world you want to go into is communications, and whether you're entry level or you're director level or SVP, everyone is looking to see how they can have a greater impact in their role. I think finding these things that have been pushed out understanding them, and maybe writing an article or a LinkedIn post where you're sort of talking about your views on this, making it fact-based, showing that you're consuming this news and understanding it and sharing it with another audience. Those are things that will get real traction. And whether it's a non-profit or a fund or it's a company, if you're taking an announcement that they've made and you're writing, it doesn't have to be long or detailed, like a 400-word post. I really like this. What this means is this. I think the impact will be X, Y, Z. Writing things like that, making sure you're tagging those companies. I promise you this, the senior people in that organization will see that post because it's so rare for people to do that. And already you're going to be on their radar of someone who understands the work that they do, and you're someone that they can work with. So I think that is a piece of advice I absolutely would give to people is find those commitments, find those news stories, and retell them for your audiences as well. We are coming close to the end of the session. I just want to double check in the chat if there are any additional questions. I can't see. Akka, is anything you've noticed that I might have missed on here?
What about the question from Camila? Any tips or best practices on how to network if you're only able to attend virtually? I think that's a good, I don't know if we've answered that, but I can touch on it briefly. Just like what Adam said in terms of writing an article or something about the event that you attended, I would also say, even if you don't have the time to maybe write something like long form content about the event, just finding the email of the person that the event host that you've attended, you know, their activation, and then maybe mentioning one or two really great things that you learned about their event. So for example, if the event is about geothermal energy, you can just send a message and say, hey, I attended this event virtually. I learned XYZ, or XYZ stood out to me. And then in that way, you're kind of opening up the floor to further conversation, but just kind of being, just showing that you were attentive and you paid attention and you learned something from the event, and kind of giving them feedback of like, what, like kind of, how do I say it? Something to walk away with, essentially, like outcome, like what was the outcome of this event? So I went to this, I received this outcome, I learned XYZ, just kind of quantifying that, letting them know that you benefited from their event, and then opening up that floor for further conversation is a really good way to kind of introduce yourself and get your foot in the door if you're trying to get to know people that are working for an organization which you attended their event virtually. So just take really great notes when you're attending these events, and, you know, write down really cool, unique thing. I personally do that. I'm like, you said this an XYZ day. Even they forgot that they said it, but they'll be really impressed that you really took away something very niche and specific from that event, and they'll be so glad to hear from you, I'm sure. So I think that would be really helpful.
Amazing. I'm going to throw one final question to you, Akka, and I think you're genuinely the most qualified person in the world to answer this question, which is, if someone is interested in organizing an event for next year, how should they go about it?
Well, number one, I would say start early, because the earlier you submit your event, or the earlier you start kind of thinking about the ideas and the agenda for your event, the better for you. I mean, because we're growing so much and we're expanding, which is really great, there's that competition of, oh, I want to get my thing listed on the calendar as early as possible, which is always really nice. So I would say if you can have at least 90% of your event finalized before September, that's in your best interest, because then you'll be on the website at prime time. Everyone's going to be able to see what you're offering and what you're doing. And so I would just say start early. And also, I don't think people really know this, at least, but because Climate Group is the organization that runs the week, you are welcome to email us and say, hello, I have an event idea. I don't know how to start. I will literally respond to you. Like, I would say, hi, let's get on a call and talk. I think, you know, May, June, July, and August are prime time to get on a call with us and kind of bounce ideas off of us and share your ideas. Like, we're happy to help you. We're happy to hear what you're working on or what your ideas are. If you're stuck somewhere, you need like maybe a venue recommendation or how to craft your agenda, whatever it is that you might need as an event host. I want you to understand that, like, we as organizers of this week are willing and happy to work with you and get on a call and talk about this stuff. So the earlier you do that, the earlier you introduce yourself and say hello, the better. Our contact and host inboxes are wide open. Our LinkedIn's are open. So just say hello, get on a call quickly. We'll be happy to hear from you and work with you. So
excellent advice there. And good to end the session talking about Climate Week NYC 2025. Probably the first time that we've used those words so far. Aka, thanks so much. That's been incredibly useful. And I hope that everyone on this watching live or the recording finds it useful as well. I hope everyone, if you're online or in person, gets so much out of Climate Week NYC. And as we mentioned, there is the article linked into the chat. So please do check that out, specifically looking at the communication sessions, which you may well be interested in, as well as the climateweeknyc.org website, where you're going to be able to search all 900 of those events and find out more information about the week. But that concludes this conversation. I just want to finish up by inviting you to our next event, which is happening in late September, and it is all about pride washing. And we'll be joined by a panel of LGBTQIA2S+. Never said that before. That was a tongue twister. Advocates and communicators who will share their advice for going beyond lip service by navigating allyship without being performative. And I think as a gay person that works in climate, and we're often dealing with greenwashing, I think a conversation about pride washing is certainly something I would love to attend and find out more about. So keep your eyes on your inboxes for an invitation to that session. Thank you so much for joining. Hope to see you at Climate Week NYC, and thank you to the Impact Communications Institute for hosting us for this special session, and we will see you at the next event. Thanks so much for your questions, and Aka, thank you.
Bye.
And everyone.
Take care.